Hey, it is time for a wonderful conversation with the one, the only Andrew Reinhart, Becoming Gift with Andrew Reinhart. Good morning, Andrew. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Pat, Dave, and Ron. How are you?
Hi, Andrew.
Doing great.
Good.
Before we get started, Andrew, tell us again, how do people follow you? How do they find all your wonderful information online?
You can find everything at becominggift.com.
Becominggift.com.
That'll take you to my Substack. So I
Great.
post everything on there.
Great. Thank you.
So we're going through a series in this season of Easter as we hear the beautiful stories of conversion in the Acts of the Apostles at Mass on evangelization and the body. And today I want to talk a little bit about relational evangelization. In this idea that evangelization happens in the context of relationships, one helpful analogy is that every interaction we have is either a credit or a debit to a relationship. And of course, this is a limited analogy. Right? Relationships aren't transactional, but the idea is that interactions have value. What I mean here is that oftentimes when let's say you want somebody to join you at church, maybe to come to Mass with you or come to some event at your parish, right? That's going to be a debit in the relationship. And a good rule of thumb is you have to make about 10 deposits for every debit you make,
right.
10 credits for every deposit. And so oftentimes when people struggle to evangelize people, it's because they get this ratio wrong. They're asking a lot of people, they're kind of nagging them, come to church with me, come to this event, I wish you would join me, especially sometimes with their kids. And I would say this ratio is probably doubled with kids.
Yeah, right.
Twice as many credits before you take out a debit. And so people really think that, well, they just want me to come to church with them.
Right.
Right? They don't think you really care about them in a personal level. This is from Pope Francis in Evangelii Gaudium. When he talks about this kind of relational evangelization, he uses the term accompaniment. He says, somebody good at such accompaniment does not give in to frustrations or fears. He or she invites others to let themselves be healed, to take up their mat, embrace the cross, leave all behind, and go forth ever anew to proclaim the gospel. Our personal experience of being accompanied and assisted, and of openness to those who accompany us, will teach us to be patient and compassionate with others, and to find the right way to gain their trust, their openness, and their readiness to grow, the right path to find their trust. You know, there's an idea called the thresholds of conversion, and this is popularized by Sherry Waddell in her book, Forming Intentional Disciples. It was developed by Doug Everett and Doug Schopp. But the idea is that before people are ready to be converted, they really have kind of a distrust in the gospel and a distrust in believers in the church. So if we take somebody who doesn't trust the church or the believers and say, why don't you come to church with me?
Right.
How well do you think that's going to work out?
Yeah.
So the first threshold of conversion is from distrust to trust. And the fruit of trust is openness, which can eventually lead to the second threshold, which is curiosity, right? That the person actually cares. Because the reality is most people in our world today, they don't care about Christianity. They don't care about faith.
Right.
They don't feel like they even need to worry about that anymore. So when we propose the gospel to them, they don't even have the basic interest.
Right.
They're just completely neutral. It doesn't even show up on their radar. So we need to be able to move into a space where we can guide people from distrust to trust. And we can be a part of that. When we think of trust from a physical perspective, from a physiological perspective, though it's interesting, there's a genetic component to it. All of us just kind of have like a baseline. Some people are more apt to trust, some people are more apt to distrust. But there's reliable physiological mechanisms associated with trust. And of course, every human experiences, it's a complex, correlation in the body to what's happening when you correlate it to your consciousness. But one of the most consistent things involved with trust is the hormone oxytocin, right, which is sometimes called the cuddle hormone.
Oh, yeah.
But in this context, it's a broader application. Of course, we're not touching the person we want to evangelize.
Right.
So kind of phase that stuff out. But when we talk about developing oxytocin in a relationship, there's a lot of things you can do. One is having conversation with somebody, especially if there's a lot of good eye contact. Eye contact seems to be highly associated with oxytocin. Sharing a meal with someone, like just having someone over for dinner, taking them out to a restaurant, laughing together, shared joy has a massive effect on our oxytocin level. Sharing a new experience, sharing a novelty. So, I want to try something new. I'm going to have you come along with me. We're going to go do an escape room together, or we're going to go to a sports game that I've never seen before. But inviting them into a new experience with you that you haven't even done before and an act of kindness or generosity, especially I would say entering into somebody else's life, right? Maybe going to something they're doing, like maybe they're in a play or maybe their kid's in a sporting event that's important to them or something. But making that kind of investment into them and their family, that kind of act of kindness or generosity. So when we're thinking about this, I would propose that God has placed in every one of our lives people he wants us to love. Right? Jesus had 12 apostles. Those are the people that the Father gave him to love. And really we see in the gospel and then the Passion and the Acts, we see their conversion arc. Right? They were all with Jesus for 3 years. They all left but John at the Passion. But then we see in the Acts of the Apostles how they all are reconciled with the Lord and come back together in strong relationship with him, other than, of course, Judas. So the Lord has given us all people too. For some of us, it's our loved ones, our family, our friends, coworkers, maybe acquaintances. But to start asking that question, Lord, who are the people that you've given me to love? Who are the people that you've given me to love in order that I could bring your gospel, your hope, your joy, eternal life to them? And when we think of it from that perspective, it's not manipulative or conniving, right? You're wanting the best thing for them,
right?
The best thing possible for them, that they could have heaven and that they could even have heaven on earth and that they could have the sacraments and all of the beautiful gifts and things that the church brings into our life. So a big part of this is starting with basic human friendship, investing in these people, developing these relationships, having good conversations, sharing meals together, sharing joy, sharing new experiences with them, inviting them into your life, and then entering into their life generously with your time. And this is the foundation of bringing the gospel to someone, right? That they come to trust you.
Right.
And if they see Christ in you, then they can also come to trust Christ too. And this process then gives them space for openness and maybe even eventually curiosity in the gospel. So when we're thinking about evangelization, think about it in this mode of relationship. And I think this is a really Catholic mode of evangelization.
Yep.
Versus, when we say evangelization, people think of televangelists and getting out on the street corner with a microphone and the Jehovah's Witnesses go to door. But we need, I think, new categories as Catholics for what evangelization looks like in the context of the church.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew, because, when I was doing youth ministry, that was the sure thing, is when you care about the kids and care that you go to their events, like go to their basketball games, all that kind of stuff. And not because, this is part of my job, but because I love these kids. I want good things for them. They respond to that so quickly. They know that you really care, that you're willing to be at their events. And I think that whole idea of relationship is so important.
Well, and also just who are the people that God has brought for me to love.
Yeah.
Also, who love me. Right. I mean, that's the thing. We're not only called to love, we're called to be loved. So that relationship is really a two-way street, even as we're called to evangelize, right? So
that's one of the beautiful parts of Francis's reflections. How have people also called me forth in learning from our own experiences?
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.